Bhikkhus, there are these three causes for the origination of kama. What three? Greed is a cause for the origination of kama. Hatred is a cause for the origination of kama. And delusion is a cause for the origination of kama. It is not non-greed that originates from greed. Rather, it is just greed that originates from greed. It is not non-hatred that originates from hatred. Rather, it is just hatred that originates from hatred. It is not non-delusion that originates from delusion. Rather, it is just delusion that originates from delusion. It is not the realms of devas and humans, or any other good destinations, that are seen because of kama born of greed, hatred, and delusion. Rather, it is hell, the animal realm, and the sphere of afflicted spirits, as well as other bad destinations, that are seen because of kama born of greed, hatred, and delusion. These are three causes for the origination of kama. There are, Bhikkhus, these three other causes for the origination of kama. What three? Non-greed is a cause for the origination of kama. Non-hatred is a cause for the origination of kama. And non-delusion is a cause for the origination of kama. It is not greed that originates from non-greed. Rather, it is just non-greed that originates from non-greed. It is not hatred that originates from non-hatred. Rather, it is just non-hatred that originates from non-hatred. It is not delusion that originates from non-delusion. Rather, it is just non-delusion that originates from non-delusion. It is not hell, the animal realm, and the sphere of afflicted spirits, or any other bad destinations that are seen because of kama born of non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion. Rather, it is the realms of devas and humans, as well as other good destinations, that are seen because of kama born of non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion. These are three other causes for the origination of kama. Kimbila. Thus have I heard. On one occasion the Lord was dwelling at Kimbila in a Nikula grove. Then the venerable Kimbila approached the Lord, paid homage to him, sat down to one side, and said, What is the cause and reason why, Bhante, the good Dharma does not continue long after a Tathagata has attained final Nibbana? Here, Kimbila, after a Tathagata has attained final Nibbana, the bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, male lay followers, and female lay followers dwell without reverence and deference toward the teacher. They dwell without reverence and deference toward the Dharma. They dwell without reverence and deference toward the Sangha. They dwell without reverence and deference toward the training. They dwell without reverence and deference toward alertfulness. They dwell without reverence and deference toward hospitality. This is the cause and reason why the good Dharma does not continue long after a Tathagata has attained final Nibbana. What is the cause and reason why, Bhante, the good Dharma continues long after a Tathagata has attained final Nibbana? Here, Kimbila, after a Tathagata has attained final Nibbana, the bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, male lay followers, and female lay followers dwell with reverence and deference toward the teacher. They dwell with reverence and deference toward the Dharma. They dwell with reverence and deference toward the Sangha. They dwell with reverence and deference toward the training. They dwell with reverence and deference toward alertfulness. They dwell with reverence and deference toward hospitality. This is the cause and reason why the good Dharma continues long after a Tathagata has attained final Nibbana. A block of wood. Thus have I heard. On one occasion the venerable Sariputta was dwelling at Rajagaha on Mount Vulture Peak. Then, in the morning, the venerable Sariputta dressed, took his bowl and robe, and descended from Mount Vulture Peak together with a number of bhikkhus. In a certain place he saw a large block of wood and addressed the bhikkhus. Do you see, friends, that large block of wood? Yes, friend. If he so wished, friends, a bhikkhu possessing psychic potency who has attained mastery of mind might focus on that block of wood as earth. What is the basis for this? Because the earth element exists in that block of wood. On this basis, a bhikkhu possessing psychic potency who has attained mastery of mind might focus on it as earth. If he so wished, friends, a bhikkhu possessing psychic potency who has attained mastery of mind might focus on that block of wood as water, as fire, as air. What is the basis for this? Because the water element, the fire element, the air element exists in that block of wood. On this basis, a bhikkhu possessing psychic potency who has attained mastery of mind might focus on it as air. If he so wished, friends, a bhikkhu possessing psychic potency who has attained mastery of mind might focus on that block of wood as beautiful, as unattractive. For what reason? Because the element of beauty, the element of the unattractive exists in that block of wood. On this basis, a bhikkhu possessing psychic potency who has attained mastery of mind might focus on that block of wood as unattractive. Nagita. Thus have I heard. On one occasion the Lord was wandering on tour among the Kosalans together with a large sangha of bhikkhus when he reached the Kosalan Brahmin village named Ikanangala. There the Lord dwelled in the Ikanangala woodland thicket. The Brahmin householders of Ikanangala heard. It is said that the ascetic Gotama, the son of the Sakyans who went forth from a Sakyan family, has arrived at Ikanangala and is now dwelling in the Ikanangala woodland thicket. Now a good report about that Master Gotama has circulated thus. That Lord is an arahant, perfectly enlightened, accomplished in true knowledge and conduct, fortunate, knower of the world, unsurpassed leader of persons to be tamed, teacher of devas and humans, the enlightened one, the Lord. Having realized by his own direct knowledge the world with its devas, Mara, and Brahma, this population with its ascetics and Brahmins, its devas and humans, he makes it known to others. He teaches a dharma that is good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end, with the right meaning and phrasing. He reveals a brahmacharya that is perfectly complete and pure. Now it is good to see such arahants. Then, when the night had passed, the Brahmin householders of Ikanangala took abundant food of various kinds and went to the Ikanangala woodland thicket. They stood outside the entrance making an uproar and a racket. Now on that occasion the venerable Nagita was the Lord's attendant. The Lord then addressed the venerable Nagita. Who is making such an uproar and a racket, Nagita? One would think it was fishermen at a haul of fish. Bhante, these are the Brahmin householders of Ikanangala who have brought abundant food of various kinds. They are standing outside the entrance, wishing to offer it to the Lord and the Sangha of bhikkhus. Let me never come upon fame, Nagita, and may fame never catch up with me. One who does not gain at will, without trouble or difficulty, this bliss of renunciation, bliss of solitude, bliss of peace, bliss of enlightenment that I gain at will, without trouble or difficulty, might accept that vile pleasure, that slothful pleasure, the pleasure of gain, honor, and praise. Let the Lord now consent, Bhante, let the fortunate one consent. This is now the time for the Lord to consent. Wherever the Lord will go now, the Brahmin householders of town and countryside will incline in the same direction. Just as, when thick drops of rain are pouring down, the water flows down along the slope, so too, wherever the Lord will go now, the Brahmin householders of town and country will incline in the same direction. For what reason? Because of the Lord's virtuous behavior and panna. Let me never come upon fame, Nagita, and may fame never catch up with me. One who does not gain at will, without trouble or difficulty, this bliss of renunciation. Might accept that vile pleasure, that slothful pleasure, the pleasure of gain, honor, and praise. Here, Nagita, I see a bhikkhu dwelling on the outskirts of a village sitting in a state of samadhi. It then occurs to me. Now a monastery attendant or a novice or a co-religionist will cause that venerable one to fall away from that samadhi. For this reason I am not pleased with this bhikkhu's dwelling on the outskirts of a village. I see, Nagita, a forest-dwelling bhikkhu sitting and dozing in the forest. It then occurs to me. Now this venerable one will dispel this sleepiness and fatigue and attend only to the perception of forest, a state of oneness. For this reason I am pleased with this bhikkhu's dwelling in the forest. I see, Nagita, a forest-dwelling bhikkhu sitting in the forest in an unconcentrated state. It then occurs to me. Now this venerable one will concentrate his unconcentrated mind or guard his self-absorbed mind. For this reason I am pleased with this bhikkhu's dwelling in the forest. I see, Nagita, a forest-dwelling bhikkhu sitting in the forest in a state of samadhi. It then occurs to me. Now this venerable one will liberate his unliberated mind or guard his liberated mind. For this reason I am pleased with this bhikkhu's dwelling in the forest. See, Nagita, a bhikkhu dwelling on the outskirts of a village, who gains robes, almsfood, lodgings, and medicines and provisions for the sick. Desiring gain, honor and fame, he neglects seclusion. He neglects remote lodgings in forests and jungle groves. Having entered the villages, towns, and capital cities, he takes up his residence. For this reason I am not pleased with this bhikkhu's dwelling on the outskirts of a village. I see, Nagita, a forest-dwelling bhikkhu who gains robes, almsfood, lodgings, and medicines and provisions for the sick. Having dispelled that gain, honor, and praise, he does not neglect seclusion. He does not neglect remote lodgings in forests and jungle groves. For this reason I am pleased with this bhikkhu's dwelling in the forest. When, Nagita, I am traveling on a highway and do not see anyone ahead of me or behind me, even if it is for the purpose of defecating and urinating, on that occasion I am at ease.